I was always very, very interested in like looking and observing people. I think where I grew up, um, in the suburbs, I was always a bit like the odd one out, and maybe it's a cliche, but I didn't feel like I fit in that well. So I think I was always like observing people on how everyone else sort of acted and what kind of script everyone else seemed to have had like handed, and then just like sort of mimicking what everyone else did. But I was reading a lot of books. I spent most of my days drawing with my sister. We were really in our own world, kind of. So I think always my sort of relationship with anything outside my home was more or less like observing. It wasn't really like photography. It wasn't really tied to art, I think, for me at first. It was still tied to this like observing or looking at others or like people and like their stories. Because when I started photographing, I was mainly doing like shooting something outside myself, like some happenings, or going to the Krishna temple and doing some shots there, and just like using it sort of as the camera as a ticket to get into places. Because it's easy to get invited to someone's home, even if you just say, I want to come and take pictures. So I think it was more or less of being like curious about the world and using it as such, and more maybe leaning towards like documentary, other people's stories and other people's lives. I was not very keen on maybe experiencing my own feelings, or like thinking about my background or thinking about my traumas or anything like that. It was mainly like getting away from that. So I was interested in anything that wasn't me. I think everything changed when my sister passed away, because that sort of it's a new world in some sense, that when something really important is missing, so you have to kind of reevaluate everything that you're doing. And I didn't think that I would work with her passing or my grief. I didn't want to, but then it came so pressing like over the years that I couldn't really do anything else. So I then started to kind of figure I have to do something about it. And what was one of the catalysts for that was my grandma's passing, and then my mother did rugs of her clothes, as was the tradition. I was left with some of her belongings, mainly clothes, because I had loaned them for a costume party. And um, these clothes, they are really, or clothes always, they are really kind of painful things, even because they still have a lot of like the features of people, because we communicate with each other with the clothes that we wear. They still hold usually the scent, so they even might have some stains, or they might have the figure still in that kind of piece of material. There's one image where I call it undressing grief. So I'm trying to take this clothes, like her clothes off that I'm wearing, but I can't. So it sort of shows an action that is not finished, because for me it was still about kind of navigating in this grief. And then another one where her clothes are like piled on my back. So the symbolism is very easy, that there's just something, some kind of lump. Then I took this idea of the cutting, sort of a shedding of skin, and I was still wearing the clothes while I was cutting them. So it started showing this maybe a ritual or a performance of me standing first with the clothes and then cutting them slowly, and then kind of emerging like naked at the end to kind of show this sort of, I don't know, shedding of the sorrow in some sense. And then finally I did make a rug out of the clothes, and then I have this triptych, like a series of 4 images where I'm wrapped around the thing, and I titled that Comforter, because that means like, well, like a blanket of sorts, but also something that you can find comfort in. And in that rug, it's not just my sister's clothes, but I asked my classmates, my friends, my boyfriend, my family members some piece of black fabric, and also put like tiny strands there. So it's sort of, for me, was kind of an end point of that series. Starting with the intact clothes that were still that like symbols of sorrow, then moving forward to the cutting, the dealing with it, and then kind of the acceptance maybe in the end.